Thank you. And thanks for the quick intro. So what I want to speak about today is just a very foundational topic in the blockchain space in terms of the kind of legal side of it. And that's really when are tokens and NFTs securities? And that's really the kind of like the big question that we have. So the reason that this matters is projects can be fined heavily if they kind of cross into the securities territory. And that's why, we've had a lot of clients in the past, ranging from exchanges to projects coming up to just individuals who are in the kind of ideation stage of their startup, coming to us because significant penalties can come down onto projects who have just kind of proceeded without kind of worrying about the consequences or whether or not they'll be under the jurisdiction of regulators like the SEC, or in my case, the Ontario Securities Commission. So as you can see here, in 2021, the SEC imposed a $7 million civil penalty against Loki Inc. for issuing an unregistered security, which was their token. 2019, the SEC fined Block.one $24 million for an unregistered ICO. And just this year, Hester Pierce of the SEC has warned that NFTs could fall under the definition of security, and that he's looking for regulation to come and clarify that. So bringing it to basics, what's been applied to kind of whether or not a token or an NFT, because remember, an NFT is just a different type of token, the ERC20 versus the ERC 721. It's the Howey test that applies. And there's kind of three basic principles here. First, is there an investment of money? Second, is that investment of money in a common enterprise? And third, is that with a reasonable expectation of profits derived from the efforts of others? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each prong of this test, and then I'm going to apply it to a token and an NFT. And just to clarify, all three of these tests have to be kind of met for something to be considered a security. If one of them is off, then you're okay. And it can be applied retroactively as well. So if a regulator decides, oh well, you know what, looking back on it, that kind of looks like a security, and we didn't go after them at the time, but we should have. That can happen as well. So first is the easiest, an investment of money. All this really means is there's been an exchange of value. So this doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay in fiat for a token or offer a token for fiat or an NFT for fiat. You can offer it for, for any other cryptocurrency, any other token. It can be an NFT exchange, those sort of things. It's the definition is a lot broader than an investment of money. It's really an exchange of value. Now, the next two prongs of the test are a little bit more specific. So in the context of digital assets themselves, the SEC considered a common enterprise to arise because of a connection between the profits that were earned between the purchasers and the success of the promotional efforts of a centralized team that's kind of driving the project. And that's why there are three kind of main questions here. Is there any reliance on management for the success of the project? Is there a significant number of tokens being held by a central team? And then three, is the project centralized? And the third question is very important, because what we found is usually when projects are fully decentralized, it greatly reduces the likelihood that they'll be deemed a security. So I think we have okay. So the third prong of the test is whether or not reasonable expectation of profits can be derived at the efforts of others. So what this is really meaning, and there's certain factors that have been kind of laid down by the SEC and regulators here in Canada as well, and they kind of stem around these five categories. Now, one is does the success of the project rely on the management of a central team? And this kind of bleeds back into the common enterprise prong. Two, is there a right to share in the profits of the project? And this doesn't mean just directly like a dividend entitlement. This can also relate to any appreciation that's kind of can be tied back to the efforts of a central team or management driving the project's value forward. 3 is there opportunity for secondary trading, and this is where a lot of projects fall under, even if they're decentralized or things, or they're very like I guess would be held low risk on this prong, but many projects are on decentralized exchanges or centralized exchanges. So that's just one aspect where you're kind of leaning more towards the security side. 4, does the purchase not fit its utility? And when I say that, it's really meaning like, let's say a token, you're purchasing a token that's really a governance token, and you're buying 20,000 units when really most purchasers are buying 10 or 20. If the volume of the purchase doesn't really match the utility that the token is being kind of promoted for, then that's one factor that the regulator will look at to say, well, you know, these people are actually buying this for investment purposes, and it's looking more like a security at that point. And finally, is the utility of the token actually live? So if it's a governance token or if it's a staking token and you can't stake it, or you can't use the governance function, then really, you know, you're purchasing that for the intent that those functions will be live later on, and the value that those functions will bring will increase the value of what you've purchased. So those are just some of the main factors there. Now, if we go into a quick case study, I didn't want to just pick something like Bitcoin or Ethereum because those are more of the obvious choices. I wanted to do a little bit of an analysis with you all on two kind of projects that are more, I guess, would be less clear just on face value on whether or not they would be classified as a security. So the first one I picked was Polkadot. So if we run it through the test very quickly, one, obviously there's a value exchange there, whether or not you're buying it for fiat or you're buying it for a token, there's a value exchange. Number 2 is Polkadot is a decentralized protocol. There's no really kind of like board of directors that is controlling the operations. And that can be evidenced by number 3, where DOT tokens are governance tokens. And for staking, both functions are live, but at the same time, there's an opportunity for trading on secondary markets. But because the decentralized status of it holds a really strong factor in whether or not a token will be considered a security, that's a really, really strong foundation, and in my opinion, makes it unlikely that Polkadot would be considered a security. And I think there's a lot of evidence behind that as to the myriad of exchanges that offer Polkadot, especially in Canada, where the regulation is pretty tight on what exchanges can offer in terms of their tokens. And we've seen the most compliant exchanges and many exchanges who are just starting off be able to use and offer Polkadot without coming into any trouble. And the next one is an NFT, because I wanted to make clear that NFTs are not outside of the scope of securities law. And because of this kind of big boom that NFTs have had over the past year, it's very likely, in my opinion, that some kind of regulation is going to come in and specifically target them, even though the current regulation does kind of fit in, because technically speaking, you know, an NFT, a classic NFT is in ERC 721 or something like that. And really, it's just another form of a token which could be applied to the same test. So applying that same test for now until more clarified regulation comes up, or any other different treatment would come up for an NFT, I would use this test. So first, there is a value exchange, obviously. People are buying the NFTs for something. In the case of Bored Ape Yacht Club, there seems to be central management, that's Yuga Labs, that seem to be running the show, driving operations, creating partnerships, promoting the project itself. Now, 3, because it's an NFT, the owners of the NFTs do have the right to the commercialization of their NFTs. So profits in that sense would come at their own effort and not of others. However, because of the existence of secondary trading markets like OpenSea, and because of Yuga Labs' efforts to promote and grow the project with recent developments like ApeCoin, it seems to be that this part of the test could be met. And even though at its inception, something like Bored Ape Yacht Club would unlikely be deemed to be a security, given its growth and the development of it, especially by Yuga Labs itself driving that growth, it seems to me that it's getting closer and closer to meeting the test of security. And I'm seeing a lot of NFT projects follow this path where it's they're offering more and more and more, and some of them have even gone as far as, hey, you can have entitlement to certain profits, or you can get something almost like a dividend. And it's really a shame to me to see, because I don't want another kind of blanket regulation coming down and kind of hampering any innovation. But the growth of NFT projects like this and their kind of development into other areas, it's starting to get a little bit iffy in my opinion. So I think it's something worth keeping watch on. But that's a little bit of a kind of like a few minute kind of crash course into, I think, what's a very foundational topic. And I hope you enjoy it. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Alex, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Yeah, I just put myself on mute in case anyone had questions.
Oh, Alex Lee, sorry.
Okay, so thank you, Alex. So if have any question about his topic, then you can write in the chat. Okay, thanks. I didn't know that, because yeah, next webinar.